retro games fans, this is Andy C from Piece of 8-Bit and welcome to this week's main feature episode, which is absolutely not an edition of The Bit Between. And you will see why in a matter of moments. So, yes, as we said before, on a few occasions now, the Game Boy shouldn't really have won. We've talked about this month about how Nintendo's little monochrome handheld went up against technically superior machines like the Atari Lynx and the Sega Game Gear and absolutely destroyed them. But as we've also discussed, the hardware was only really part of that story, because when the Game Boy ultimately launched outside of Japan in 1989, one of its biggest weapons wasn't Mario, it wasn't Sega, and it wasn't even made by Nintendo themselves. It was a little puzzle game created several years earlier, thousands of miles away on a Soviet computer, which in the 80s was a pretty incredible thing. Remember the Iron Curtain, anyone? And it didn't even have proper graphics. We are of course talking about the legendary block puzzle game Tetris. Nintendo made the inspired decision to put Tetris in the box with the Game Boy in major Western markets, and the result was one of the greatest partnerships in gaming history, because the Game Boy helped turn Tetris into a worldwide phenomenon, but I think Tetris also helped turn the Game Boy into one as well. So where did this incredibly simple game come from? How did Nintendo get their hands on it? And why was it so important to the Game Boy story? That's what we're going to explore in today's episode. Our story begins in Moscow in 1984. Alexey Pajitnov was working as a computer engineer at the Soviet Academy of Sciences and had a particular fascination with puzzles. Now, I've had to turn off my Amazon Alexa as it keeps going off in my video, and I also want to apologise in advance to any Russians out there who will be wincing at my pronunciation. This month seems littered with name pronunciations for me to trip up on that folks keep correcting me quite rightly on. But anyway, one of Alexey's favourite involved pentominoes, geometric shapes constructed from 5 squares. Pajitnov wondered whether he could turn that basic idea into a computer game. The Electronica 60 he was using wasn't exactly designed for gaming, I think it's safe to say, so the original version didn't even use conventional graphics, and instead of 5 squared pentominoes, Pajitnov simplified things to make shapes from 4 squares, tetrominoes. Combine tetra, meaning 4, with one of Pajitnov's favourite sports, tennis, and you've got yourself Tetris. The rules, as many of us know, are beautifully simple. Shapes fall, you rotate them, you complete a horizontal line, and it disappears. And almost immediately, people became obsessed with it. Copies spread around Moscow, then across the Soviet Union, and eventually into the West. But remember, of course, this is Cold War Soviet Union. Pajitnov couldn't simply sign a publishing contract and then start collecting royalties. The international rights became controlled through a Soviet organisation called ELOG. And from there, things get quite messy. British businessman Robert Stein attempted to acquire the rights. Deals were subsequently made involving Microsoft, Spectrum Holobyte, and versions of Tetris began appearing on Western computers in all sorts of places. The problem was that different companies all thought that they owned the different versions to the rights, on whether it was in the computer, arcade, console, handheld. And eventually you had several major companies all effectively believing that they had the legitimate claims to Tetris. Enter Henk Rogers. Rogers recognised how special Tetris was and also knew Nintendo had a new portable system on the way. So rather than relying on the increasingly confusing chain of licensing deals, he travelled to Moscow and negotiated directly with ELOG. There he also met Pajitnov, beginning a friendship and business relationship that would become enormously important to the future of Tetris. The negotiations revealed that some companies didn't quite own as many rights as they thought they did, who knew? And crucially, Nintendo was able to secure the rights it needed for consoles and, most importantly, for us, the humble gamers. And more specifically, actually, handheld gamers. Now this meant that Tetris then was going to be heading to the Game Boy. So now Nintendo had an interesting decision to make. The Game Boy was going to be launching internationally, and Nintendo had obviously what seemed like the perfect choice for a pack-in title, and that was of course Super Mario Land. Now, Mario has helped turn the NES into a phenomenon, so surely you would want to put Mario into the box with Nintendo's new machine. Henk Rogers, of course, had another idea. The story goes as follows. Nintendo of America President Minoru Arakawa questioned why they would bundle Tetris rather than Mario. Fair question, I would say. Rogers' argument was essentially this. Bundle Mario and boys will buy the Game Boy. Bundle Tetris and everyone will buy it. Now, whether every word of that conversation happened exactly as it's subsequently been told almost kind of doesn't matter, because the strategy was bang on, right? Mario appealed primarily to people who already understood video games, whereas Tetris required almost no gaming knowledge whatsoever. There were no enemies, there were no platforms, no complicated controls to get your head around, no characters. You could just give someone a Game Boy running Tetris, and within moments they would understand exactly what it was that they were supposed to do. So Nintendo bundled Tetris with the Game Boy in North America and in Europe, and it was an extraordinary decision because Tetris didn't show off what the Game Boy could do technically. It showed people why they needed a Game Boy in their life. It was quick and portable and almost infinitely replayable, and of course, as we've discussed, immediately understandable. The Game Boy version sold, get this right, 35 million copies. Helped enormously, of course, by that pack-in bundle, of course. But Tetris now wasn't simply just a puzzle game anymore. It was a phenomenon, and it was everywhere. And I think it's probably going to be worth playing some actual Tetris here. So we'll do that in the next section, because more than 35 years later, there's remarkably little that still needs explaining. You've got 7 different tetrominos, different sort of configurations, and they're all dropping into the playfield. You move them from left to right, and you can rotate them. Once you complete a horizontal line, that line will then disappear. The more lines you clear, the more points you score. And as you progress, the pieces fall faster. That's it. Nothing more to it. But the genius is everything that emerges from all those incredibly simple rules, because all the way through the game you're making loads of little decisions all the time. Do I put this piece here? Do I leave that gap open? Do I clear a couple of lines now, or do I go for it and take the risk, build higher and wait for the long straight piece so that I can clear all 4 lines at once, which is of course a Tetris. And when that long piece inevitably refuses to appear, the nice organised structure you've been building will suddenly become a complete disaster. It's one of those games where the failure will feel like it was your fault, so you immediately want to do it again. And that's particularly important on the Game Boy. Tetris didn't feel like a console game that's been compromised to work on a handheld. If anything, the Game Boy makes more sense of Tetris than anything else. The monochrome screen doesn't matter at all. The relatively basic hardware also makes no difference. There's no fast scrolling, there's no backgrounds, there's no things for the screen or the machine to struggle with. Everything is clear and everything is readable, and you can play for 5 minutes or you can play for an hour or even longer. And with the Game Boy's excellent battery life, of course, you could just take it anywhere. And then, of course, you've also got that wonderful music, most famously the Game Boy version's Type A theme, based on the Russian folk tune, let me try and get this, Korubeniki, which became so closely associated with Tetris that many people now effectively think of it as simply the Tetris song. And there's another also important feature which I haven't spoken about yet, which is multiplayer. You can connect 2 games together using the Game Boy link cable and give each player a copy of Tetris, and suddenly this simple solitary puzzle game becomes very competitive. You clear multiple lines and that will send blocks to your opponent, so now you're not trying to survive anymore, just simply you're also trying to bury the person that's next to you. It's a really simple concept that would continue through competitive Tetris for decades, right through to things like Tetris 99 on the Switch. And it also demonstrated something really important about the Game Boy itself. These little handhelds could play together. So let's have a look at a little bit of gameplay now and see how far I can get with Tetris. We just absolutely have to do it. So let's go and do a little bit of Tetris now and see just how far I can get, and just remind you of this wonderful game as if you need to be reminded. Right then, Let's have a quick go of Tetris, as if anybody needs to have this game explained to them. Let's just click on the one player here, and of course we are going to pick the A-type game, I think. I can't remember what the difference is between those two, and we're going to pick obviously our A-type music, which is the fantastic tune that you hear in the background. I'm not going to try and pronounce it again. We're going to start at level 0. And let's just see how far we get. I'm going to have one game, and if it lasts 30 seconds, then that will be it. If it lasts 10 minutes, well, I might edit it if it lasts 10 minutes. So obviously, as if I need to explain this game to anybody, it's very simple. I can rotate the blocks. I tend to just rotate them in one direction, but you can rotate them in the other direction if you want to. I tend to keep it quite simple. There we go. There's our first block. First line, sorry. And there's the elusive stick. All of these pieces have their own name. I think this is a T shape. This is a zigzag. And what you learn as you start to play the game is to pay attention to the blocks that are coming, help you make the decision on where you're going to place your block the next time round. So it just keeps it nice and simple. Now we're in a position now where, see now, because I've paid attention to the block that's coming, it means I've placed the block before in a more beneficial place. Now we're after the stick. So this is the thing. This is the thing with Tetris right here. Now I am now waiting for the elusive stick. I need 2. So I'm going to drop this down here anyway because I need 2 sticks actually. Now what do I do with this? I'm going to have one for ages. Oh, it's just the thing with this game. It is the thing with this game. I want to get Tetris. So I'm gonna risk it all, and I'm gonna try and get a couple of sticks. It's been flipping ages since I had the last one. Oh, this is the thing with this game, and I'm sure this game knows. It might have been made in the late 80s, but I'll tell you what, I'm pretty sure this game has artificial intelligence built in. I'm gonna have to go for it and just get rid of some of these, because otherwise I'm gonna find myself in big trouble. I chickened out on my desire to go to Tetris, so oh no, this could go. Oh, this is bad. Now I could just pop this down here. It's going to leave a gap at the bottom. Oh, finally, you finally turned up. Well, great. I don't need you now. Yeah, nothing happened there. And you see the simplicity of this, and obviously, you know, oh, that's good. That's 3. That's not too bad. You know, you can choose when to drop the pieces as well. So once they're in the right place, you can press down and accelerate it as well, so you can whiz through the game a bit quicker. I think you get more points as well if you do that. I think if you send it down sooner, you get a few more points extra. And a slight continuity issue with the video recording there, in that my light's just gone off, which is why everything suddenly went a bit darker for a second there. Right, now you see, now we're in a good position now. If we get a 4-piece line stick thingamadoo-freeze, we are in a good place to place that if we can survive long enough to do it, of course. Oh, stop giving me these. Not helpful. Oh, this is a gamble. Actually, no, I am going to do it. I am going to keep gambling. I'm going to gamble for that. I should not have done that. I should have paid attention. I should have listened to my own advice. Here we go. Are we going to get Tetris now? I think we will. Yay! There we go. So I think we can just drop this one in here. I'll get rid of 1. I have, of course, made a foolish error there in not realising that I'd also got a gap there. So I've actually blocked the bottom off, which is not great. Right, now where do I go? I think here's got to be, but the trouble is I'm now building up that block. Just gone to level 2. So you start at level 0 actually, rather than level 1. Oh yes, they're like London buses. Look at these sticks. Now they're all turning up. That's good news though, because that means, or is it good news? No, not really, because I have to. It's tedious. I thought I might just be able to clear that block there, but not yet. I can clear that. I've created myself another problem now. This is the thing as well, I found when I used to play Tetris years ago, I would avoid blocking anything for the longest time, and it made me a much more cautious Tetris player. But where's the fun in that? I think this is a much more fun way of playing, you know, playing for the bigger scores. I mean, there are people that are just absolutely amazing at this game and play it for hours and hours and hours, going to get loads of levels under their belt. We're going to level 3. What I'll suggest is, if I make it that far, we'll stop at, I think we'll stop at level 5. And then if you want to play some more, you can go find it, obviously. Oh, this is annoying. Yeah, that'll clear it. That'll clear it, I think. Right, stick please. I don't know why. I don't know. It feels to me like they are a rarer piece, and I'm sure they're not. I'm sure the pieces are just completely random. But I think to anybody who's played Tetris in any shape or form for any length of time will tell you that these pieces that are just coming down now feel like they are elusive. Oh, that's annoying. I'll have to put it away. There we go. This is my strategy of just turning in one direction, so I only have to press one button. It can sometimes backfire. I'd love to hear how you play this game. Everybody's got their own little strategies and ways of playing it. You know, what's your go-to strategy for playing Tetris? How do you typically manage your pieces? I think in some of the newer versions of Tetris as well, you can store a piece. So if there's a piece you don't like, you can put it in a storage bank, but obviously if you want to store something else in there, you then have to use the piece that is already stored there. More often than not, you end up storing one of these zigzag pieces because you think, oh, they're no use to me at this moment. Oh, we might have Tetris coming up here. So let's pop another 4 in there. There we go. Fabulous. And we are now level 4. I don't know when that happened. Right, I'm going to go this side because this wants to go this side. It is incredibly satisfying when you play this game as well, when you clear so much out, and then that is very quickly taken away from you when you get pieces like this. I've got a place for it this time, but these are the ones that are always the trickiest to place. Now, do we want to put that? I'm going to put that there. And I'd love to, I really would love to hear your thoughts, because I imagine there's some people screaming at the screen now going, why do you put it that way round? I would never do it that way. Put it a different way. You know, everybody, like I said, everybody has their own way of doing it. It's, I don't know if you remember, there was an advert, I think it was in the 90s, about how you eat your cream egg. And I think only people in the UK are going to get that reference. But needless to say, it was one of those things, how do you eat yours? And it's a bit like how you play Tetris. I think everybody plays it a little bit differently. Oh, this is going to work out nicely. Right. Oh, we're up to level 5. I said we would stop at level 5, so that's what we're going to do. So hopefully you get the idea. I mean, everybody knows this game. Everybody understands this game. So let's go back and carry on talking about Tetris in the rest of the video. And I will see you in there. Okay, there you go then. So a little bit of gameplay for you there. Hope that wasn't too painful to watch. But this next part is where Tetris becomes particularly important to our Game Boy month, right? So we've been already looking at why Nintendo beat its technologically superior competitors, right? Price, size, obviously that battery life thing, Nintendo's existing momentum, and of course, the games. Now, Tetris might be the single best example of why Nintendo's approach really did work so well. Atari could talk about the Lynx's colour screen, Sega could also talk about the Game Gear's colour graphics, Nintendo could just hand you a Game Boy with Tetris in it and let you play. And crucially, the person Nintendo handed it to didn't even have to be a gamer. They could be adults, parents, aunties, uncles, grandmas, whatever. People had absolutely no interest. People who had no interest in playing Mario did play Tetris. And that made the Game Boy something more than simply a portable games console for children. And once millions of Game Boys were out there, Tetris then benefited too, because you suddenly had tens of millions of identical machines carrying essentially the same game around the world. Tetris and Game Boy just became synonymous with each other and completely inseparable. And that's why I think the relationship was so important. The Game Boy didn't need spectacular technology because Tetris demonstrated the experience mattered more than specifications. And that is about as perfect an example of Gunpei Yokoi's philosophy for the Game Boy as you could possibly find. Of course, you can go check out my video on Gunpei Yokoi from last week actually. Quite the genius. So Tetris obviously didn't disappear with the original Game Boy. In fact, quite the opposite. It became one of the most widely released and recognisable games ever created. Everybody knows what Tetris is. Everybody has heard of it. The Game Boy itself received Tetris DX on the Game Boy Color, and then we got versions such as Tetris DS, countless console and mobile releases. There was quite a few just on the Game Boy itself actually, and much more experimental interpretations like Tetris Effect. And then, of course, we've talked about it before, there was Tetris 99 on the Switch. You take that basic idea of attacking another player's board, and instead of connecting two Game Boys with a cable, you connect 99 players online instead. Different tech, enormously different scale, but you can still see the same fundamental idea. There's also a much happier ending to Pajitnov's side of the story too. After years in which he hadn't personally received the enormous financial rewards you might expect from creating Tetris, the right situation eventually got sorted in 1996. Pajitnov and Henk Rogers founded the Tetris company, and Pajitnov was finally able to benefit from his creation, which brings us back all the way to the start, to the question we started with. Did the Game Boy make Tetris? Well, not entirely. Tetris was already spreading around the world before Nintendo became involved. People had already realised that this incredibly simple puzzle game was something quite special. But the Game Boy gave Tetris something completely different. It gave it scale. Millions of people carrying the same game around in their pocket, meaning Tetris became more than just a successful video game. It became part of popular culture in its own right. Flipping that question around then for a second, did Tetris make the Game Boy? Again, not entirely. The Game Boy had Mario, it got Zelda, and also, of course, that incredible Nintendo library, and eventually Pokemon would give the machine an extraordinary second life. It had good price, battery life, and portability, and they were already enormous advantages, but Tetris gave the Game Boy something Mario couldn't: universality. Universality, is that a word? Did I get that right? You get what I mean anyway. So you didn't have to be a Nintendo fan. You didn't even have to be a gamer. Tetris gave practically anyone a reason to pick up a Game Boy. And that's what makes this partnership so remarkable. Tetris wasn't designed for the Game Boy. It had been created 5 years ago, thousands of miles away, behind the Iron Curtain on a Soviet computer. Yet somehow it was almost the perfect Game Boy game. It didn't need colour. It didn't need powerful graphics. It didn't need a big screen. It just needed something to carry it around with everywhere, and the Game Boy didn't need a game that demonstrated its technical capabilities. It needed a game that demonstrated why portable gaming was brilliant. Tetris did exactly that. The Game Boy made Tetris portable, Tetris made the Game Boy universal, and more than 35 years later, yeah, you heard that right, I am not sure gaming has ever seen a more perfect packing title than any other machine. Let me know if you think you know different. But yeah, let's hop over now and grab my final thoughts on this amazing partnership. So there you go. I hope that was interesting for you. Yeah, if you can think of another game, another packing title like that, which has been had quite the same impact, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Let me hear your thoughts and memories on Tetris as well, because it wasn't just on the Game Boy. I remember the little LCD games, you know, the sort of not Game & Watch, but the sort of unofficial Game & Watch style games had block puzzles and things like that on it. So I'd seen Tetris probably before I'd seen it on a Game Boy. But for me, the Game Boy version, the original Game Boy version of Tetris is still the best. And there are so many block puzzle games that have really tried to replicate that success. We've seen things like Dr. Mario, Puyo Puyo, what else have we seen? Lumines on the PSP, which is a game, by the way, I absolutely love. And in fact, actually, if you look back through my archive, I did talk about it when we were talking about the Sega Game Gear, the sort of Battle of the Block games. And Lumines is probably actually my favourite, despite talking about Tetris in such glowing terms today. That's probably my favourite. I probably played that more than Tetris, actually. But I think for most people, Tetris, and for me, it still holds a really, really important memory and a really important bit of nostalgia. And I totally recognise the impact that it had on gaming and the Nintendo. And more specifically, the Nintendo Game Boy, so not the Nintendo Game Boy in general. Just an incredible phenomenon. So, yeah, an incredible thing and surprising origins. And I think probably a lot of people already know this story, but I think it was really interesting to go back and have a look at it anyway, and also have a bit of a chat about it and reminisce, and also go and have a bit of gameplay. Who doesn't love a bit of gameplay, especially when it's Tetris? So there you go. That is my main feature for this week. Like I said, hope you found that interesting. Coming up on the channel then, next week, all being well, and this is not a promise, but I mentioned this on the Bit Between on Wednesday as well, we will probably be doing a unboxing / pickups video, which is a little bit out of the ordinary. I don't tend to do them very often, but I've got something very interesting coming this week, so I kind of wanted to share that with you. So it'll be a bit of an unconventional video next Friday. Yes, so that's coming up. Next Wednesday, I think we're going to be looking at Pokemon, probably the red edition, because that's the one that I have for the Game Boy. So we're going to be having a look at that. Now, I am not a Pokemon player by any stretch of the imagination. I usually have to draft my son in to help me with anything Pokemon related, but I feel like it's about time that I did, especially because this is the first version and it was a phenomenon on the Game Boy, and of course continues to be a phenomenon even now in 2026, some 30 odd years later. So we're going to be having a look at that as well, and then of course following that we might have time for one more Bit Between before we wrap up the month with I haven't decided quite the order yet. It might be that the end of the month with happens next week, and that we also have a bonus pickup video. I haven't quite figured that bit out yet, but we shall see. I've got some holiday coming up, so I kind of want to make sure I've got the Game Boy with me for that. So yes, I've said enough. If you enjoyed that video, if you do enjoy any of these videos, please do hit that like and subscribe button. I really do appreciate your support. Thank you so much for that. Obviously hit that bell icon for notifications. I say it every week. I don't need to tell you, you already know these things anyway. Probably just leaves me to say thanks all for watching, and please do all take care of yourselves. I will see you in the next one, which will be Pokemon for the Bit Between next Wednesday. Until then, bye for now.